I have possibly the most important guest we've ever had on the show, and that's my wife, Mrs. Georgia Rhoda.
I mean, obviously, I benefit from some of your treatments occasionally. I think the main thing for me is the flexibility.
So all in all, George, do you think it was the right decision for us as a family for me to go into aesthetics?
I definitely do. I think we live a beautiful life because of the decision that you made.
Hello and welcome back to our podcast, The Aesthetic Edge, where we talk about all things aesthetics. Now guys, we're going to get right into it. I have possibly the most important guest we've ever had on the show, and that's my wife, Mrs. Georgia Rhoda. George, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a long journey with our 9-month-old on the train, but hopefully what we hope to give you from this chat is to talk about family life in aesthetics, how going into aesthetics has impacted us as a family, how it's impacted me as an individual, and how hopefully it can improve your personal life at home. So let's get right into it. So George, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, of course. So my name is Georgia. I am currently a stay-at-home mother for our 9-month-old, but prior to then I was a consultant in HR for PricewaterhouseCoopers.
And to go into a little bit of detail so our listeners know about our history, it's quite a cute story if I do say so myself. So George and I actually met in university on the first day, so we were 18 at that time, and I obviously fancied George right away. Her not so much, me, but I didn't look the way I do now. I had straightened hair, I had bright orange trousers, terrible dress sense, but I shoot my shot and I still approached George and I still tried to say hello, and after months and months of begging, George finally agreed to go out with me. And since then, we've got engaged, we've got married, we've had a baby, and we've bought a house together. So we do have our own happily ever after, don't we, George?
We do. You forgot the vest. The tank top vest you used to wear.
Yeah, I used to wear
and
vests,
a dog we also do have.
Yeah, and I wasn't actually, a lot of people who are quite muscular wear vests. I was a skinny 18-year-old kid, quite scrawny, but I thought I looked good at the time. Anyway, so that's a little bit about us. So we made a decision for me to go into aesthetics. Now, at the time, you had some hesitations about it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think having seen you go through your university career, it was 5 years at university, and then you were going on to do your foundation years within the NHS. I think for me personally at the time, I thought it was a bit of a, I want to say waste to go into aesthetics, because I thought you'd spent so long doing your medical degree. And then going into aesthetics was not the kind of service I thought you would necessarily be providing. So I thought it was maybe not the right decision for you at that time, given you had spent so much time working in the NHS and trying to get your degree. And I also thought that you're such a caring, compassionate person that you would have utilised those kind of talents within that kind of career within the NHS. But obviously that's changed and my opinions have changed, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point.
Yeah, let's get into it right now. Why have your opinions changed?
I think initially, as I've just said, I was concerned about how you'd be giving back to people, and that was something I know that you focus on and that is a bit of a passion for you. But I think having seen how much you light up when you're doing a transformation for somebody, or when you're doing something like this, or whether you're just speaking to someone about how they can improve their lifestyle, I think that element of you has really improved your life, and then in turn it's improved kind of our life. And I think this aesthetics world does afford us a lot of flexibility.
Oh, yes.
And I think that that's a kind of a really amazing thing, especially when we've started a new little family.
Yeah, we always said that I'm a completely different person when I come home from an NHS shift versus coming home from an aesthetic shift. I'd be tired, I'd be knackered, I'd be overworked, undervalued, sometimes doing 13-hour shifts, 4 days in a row, sometimes doing nights. And you would see when I'd come home, I was miserable. I didn't really want to talk to anyone either, especially, talking to people all day at work and then having to come home and being socialized. It just wasn't for me. So when I went into aesthetics, we really had to make this decision together. Yep. And it was only when we talked it through when we decided I'm a much happier person when I do aesthetic shift, because I'm seeing my patients who I love, my patients are my friends. And when we come together, we have a chat, we gossip, get to know each other, and then they leave feeling so much better about themselves because they've had a treatment that either they look amazing right away or they're going to look amazing in 2 weeks. And I think that is where I get that job satisfaction. But you also touched a little bit about the flexibility.
Yes.
So if we compare how much time I was at home when I was in the NHS versus how much time I'm at home now, how would that compare?
I think when you first were dabbling in aesthetics, you were doing some NHS shifts and you were doing some shifts like this, or you were doing private patients?
Mostly NHS, and there's only a small amount of aesthetics, because it takes time to build your business.
Yeah, and that was during COVID. So that was obviously a very interesting time for everybody. And I think you were doing the service, you were doing kind of the NHS service properly, and you were helping out as and where you could. But I think you were working night shifts, as you say, you were kind of coming back and you were feeling tired, which would then potentially ruin the next day if you were not available to
Get
work.
well quite a lot, didn't I?
Yes, you did. And so I think obviously now it's significantly more flexible, but you are obviously your own boss at this point, and so you are self-employed. So I think that comes with kind of pros and cons, because you're your own boss, so you have to be available to people often. So you're often on your phone, whereas in the NHS you could kind of leave the job. But obviously here you work significantly fewer hours and you get the benefit of that in turn.
So I am at home more, for sure.
Yep.
That's definitely the case, and I do feel like I have more free time. But you touched upon something that's really important here, that a lot of aesthetic practitioners don't actually know, and this is the fact that when you run your own business, your mind never really turns off. You're always thinking about your business, and like you said, when you're in the NHS, you do your job and you come home. Often you're staying late, often you're stressed, often you have these stresses of having patients' lives on your hands. So the stresses are less important,
Yes.
I would say. But you are always thinking about how you can grow your business, which, some would argue could be quite fun. I think I've quite enjoyed growing my business, watching it grow. But I think when people first start off, it's quite a daunting prospect. You see everyone else around you and people who are established in the industry, who have been in there for 3, 5, 10 years. And you see people with, huge clinics and, on Instagram, it all looks amazing. But for the people who just start off, it can be quite daunting. So one thing I wanted to say is that it does take time to get there, but it's absolutely reasonable to create perhaps a 6-figure business within 2 to 3 years, and perhaps even a 7-figure business within 5 to 10 years. You just have to keep going, guys. That's the most important thing. But going back into the benefits of me going into aesthetics, do you feel like, apart from flexibility and job satisfaction, do you think there's anything else that stood out in terms of me going into aesthetics, how we as a family have benefited?
I mean, obviously I benefit from some of your treatments occasionally.
Yeah.
So that is obviously a real perk of the job. I think the main thing for me is the flexibility, and I don't want to hammer that home too hard, because that might not be the same case for everybody. But I do think, especially now we have our baby, it's definitely been more helpful, I think, from the average dad or the average other parent who's not at home with the baby. It's been lovely to have you around during the week times to help out, or just to be that extra kind of pair of hands to help really with me, and to be around to see your daughter grow up.
Yeah, and that was the most important thing for me. I think that was sort of the turning point, because you and I always knew we wanted to have kids. Obviously, our kid came slightly sooner than we expected. But I think the turning point for us when we were making a decision about whether I actually pursue aesthetic, because I did it at the end of F1 when I wasn't really enjoying medicine and I wanted to just dabble. The plan was just to dabble. I was actually going to either go into surgery or to GP and do aesthetics on the side. Yeah. And it was only when I started working in COVID that we had to sit down, we had a chat, and we decided, okay, how do we move forward? And we decided to go into aesthetics. And the absolutely crazy thing that I've noticed relatively recently in the industry, or at least at the time that this is being filmed, is that actually a lot of doctors are struggling to get jobs at the moment. And this is why I train doctors all the time and meet lots of them multiple times throughout the month. And actually what we're finding is that there's a huge demand for doctors. Obviously, we all know that NHS needs doctors, but getting a job is so competitive. So I know multiple doctors who are actually out of role at the moment. They just can't find a job and they're unemployed. And I remember for us, one of the major concerns about going into aesthetics is we always thought that as a doctor I'd have job security. Yeah. And what we're finding at the moment, that's not necessarily the case. No. And actually going into aesthetics has given me job security, which I thought was, kind of the tables turned there, as it were. So I think making the decision to go into aesthetics has actually given us job security and actually made our lives a little bit more secure. What do you think?
I think it's definitely given you more job security because you have different avenues that you've explored. So you have your private clinic, you obviously work for Dermot Medical, you have various other kind of endeavours that you have. So I definitely think it's given you some security because if anything happens, you've got other things to fall back on. And I think the benefit then of me having even more of a secure job
Yes.
than you do, is also means that you can go out and you can take those risks.
Take the risks, yeah.
I am not a risk taker by background. So
That's why we work well together.
Exactly. So you can go out and you can make decisions that are beneficial for you and for your business, and I can continue to work and excel at the company that I do work for. But also we have that as a bit of a fallback plan. So we've probably got the balance right at this point.
Yeah, but you touched on an important point there, is that actually I have been open to multiple opportunities that I never thought possible. When I got into aesthetics, I just thought it was going to be me, my private patients, and then I'll just carry on seeing them and slowly build up my clinic list. But what this industry does is it opens up so many different opportunities. So I've had the opportunity to work as head doctor at Cavendish Clinic, where I foster business relationships with product companies and training companies. I've worked with Derma Medical, and I've opened up courses in different countries. I run this podcast. And obviously I do training as well, and it's given me the opportunity to travel abroad and teach in places in the US. So it's allowed me to do so many different things, and I truly believe the key to happiness is variety. And aesthetics is great, and I wished that I would be where I am now 5 years ago, having a busy clinic list, but I do think you can't do the same thing over and over again.
No.
And in the NHS, I do feel like it's quite regimented. You go from junior doctor to a resident, or to an SHO, to a registrar, to a consultant, and you often do end up doing the same thing over and over again. And that's great if you enjoy what you do. I think for a lot of people in the NHS, they're not really enjoying what they're doing, and this gives you flexibility to actually enjoy what you're doing at home, like family life or whatever your hobbies are. But it also allows you to explore new job opportunities and enter more of the corporate world, which I think has been really exciting for us as well. It's opened up a lot of new opportunities.
Yeah.
So in terms of going into aesthetics and the decision that we made together, what do you think has been our biggest challenge that we faced so far?
I think that having our daughter was probably the biggest. I don't want to call her a challenge.
She is definitely a challenge. She is.
I don't want to call her a challenge, but I think it certainly meant a bit of. We were talking about flexibility, we've been talking about balance. It was definitely an opportunity for you and I to properly have a think about how you wanted to work your career and how mine would take a bit of a back step, so that you could obviously excel, but also we could also look after our daughter. So I think it's not been a challenge, but it's probably one of the biggest discussions or the biggest contention points that we've had, which is how do you come back from a day of seeing clients or a derma medical shift and make sure that you're present and that you're with her, so that I can also have a bit of a break as well. So I don't think I think it was definitely an improvement upon if you'd been working at the NHS and we were trying to manage this together whilst you were working there. And that's not to say anything about the NHS. I just think it demands more of you. Whereas I think obviously working at Derma, you've definitely got that balance. But we're just obviously managing the cards that we've been played or that we've been given. And I think that was probably the biggest.
There has been a challenge, hasn't it? Because I often feel like I always need to be on my phone. Like we discussed before, you're constantly thinking about your business. If a patient texts me at 8 p.m. because they want to book in, I want to reply back as soon as possible because I want to get that patient booked in. Otherwise, they're going to find someone else. But actually, one thing that's been really helpful to me, and I hope will be helpful to you as listeners, is that I actually made the decision to get a virtual PA. And it's not actually as expensive as you think. It can be £20 an hour, but you're not necessarily paying for that entire hour. For example, my virtual PA might reply to a patient of mine and perhaps only take about 2 minutes, 3 minutes of that time, and they'll only bill me for that 2 or 3 minutes. So it's not like I'm continuously paying them from 9 to 5. I'm only paying them for the time that I use them for. And that's incredibly helpful. I feel like I've gotten my life back. It's because I have this virtual PA to answer my queries. And don't get me wrong, I'm available to my patients if there's any medical queries. But actually being able to just switch off, put my phone on silent, and actually be present with the family. Of course, I am on my phone to work with other things. But having someone to deal with my patients, deal with my clinic list, has been extremely helpful. And when you first start off, you think that that's a big business expense, but actually it's been one of the best investments I've made in my business.
Yeah, well, I think there was a bit of, I think that's what they say, pain is gain. So you had a bit of pain to try and set it up and to get everything sorted.
It did take some time
and
to
I think that was a bit of a challenge for us because a lot of your time was going to getting that sorted, where we might have needed a bit more help at home. But once it was set up, I have seen a bit more of a balance from you and a bit more kind of presence.
Yeah.
I think that's what's important for me, because it's difficult. I mean, having a career of myself where you do also you're beholden to clients. You do need to make sure that you're checking your emails or your phone. I understand it. I think now I'm on the other side where I don't have to be checking it at the moment whilst I'm off work. I think our next challenge will be when I go back to work.
Yes. That's future Rosh and George's problem. Let's think about it then. But yeah, I think you're right though. It's not as just simple as getting a virtual PA to do it. There is a setup process. I think one of the most important things is that my patients know me, and I am quite warm and friendly, and it's not just like, okay, you're booked in at this time. It's having a little bit of a conversation and trying to teach my virtual PA to be able to do that and kind of reciprocate the Dr. Rosh ethic, or Dr. Rosh.
The customer experience.
Experience, yeah, exactly. I think that took some time, but once it got there and I can actually see the messages that my assistant's sending, it is as if I was sending it. And it also, another benefit that I found is that it creates a little bit of a barrier between the patient and myself. Most of my patients are amazing. One or two of them become a little bit reliant and they end up texting me all the time. So they'll text me because they found a new cream and they want my opinion, or they'll text me because they want to do lots of different changes to their appointment. If I have a barrier, if I have a virtual PA, there is that little extra barrier where they respect my time a little bit more. And my assistant can say, Dr. Rosh is not available at this time. My patients can still get to me if there is an emergency. I always want to be available for that. But little queries like that, I can just have like an extra conduit, which has actually worked really nicely for us. So next question, and be careful here. How do you think aesthetics has changed me as a person, or perhaps us as a couple, in terms of our dynamic? Any characteristic traits that have changed, do you think?
Your face?
Yes, true. Yeah, the before and after is certainly interesting. Yeah.
How do I think it's changed us in our relationship?
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting question because I've never really had the opportunity to think about how aesthetics has changed us. I definitely think it's made vast improvements to our life. I think it's opened doors for you. I think it's made you a happier person, and in turn then it's improved our relationship because you're coming to the relationship from a different mindset with more energy. So I think generally, in answer to your question, a short answer to your question is made vast improvements to our way of life, but also to you and your mental and physical health, which then in turn has helped me, and it's opened doors for me in terms of helping me understand a bit more about what I should be using on my skin, or how I could better improve what I'm eating or what I'm kind of wearing kind of generally speaking. So I do think it's made improvements. I would say the biggest improvement is to you and to your health and your well-being.
And confidence as well, I think.
Oh yeah, vastly improved your confidence and your ability to speak confidently about various different topics, but also just the customer experience. I've seen how you are with your clients, and it's obviously much improved since. I wouldn't say you were a nervous wreck when you started, but I think you've generally gained because you've worked so much and you've done these treatments many times. You can see how people trust you, which is lovely, and that must be a confidence boost for you. And it's nice as a wife to see you in your element. So I think it's certainly improved your life, and in turn obviously improved our family life.
And it's not just me. I hear this story all the time from all types of aesthetic practitioners, that when they start off, it's a bit shaky. You're a bit nervous. You're not really sure what to say. You're not really sure what to do. But it's just practice, as with anything. Like, I've had the same conversation about risks and benefits of Botox and fillers so many times that I can talk about it in my sleep. I don't actually have to think about it when I have this discussion with my patients. And when you first start off, that's difficult to get. But I always say to my students that the first time you did a cannula or taking blood, it's nerve-wracking. I remember I was shaking the first time I did it. But actually, just with repetition, even just practicing at home to a mirror, things do get better and you do feel more confident over time. Because it does take a while to get there, but once you get there, it's really quite amazing what you can achieve in this sort of industry.
We did have an example of that when we were at the hospital when we were giving birth to Isla, and
I like they said we giving birth. I've never felt so useless than when George giving birth. They asked me to count to 10. I was like, what difference is that going to do? And George did amazingly.
But I remember one of the midwives came in and she was shaking like a leaf, trying to take some blood from me or something at one point. And you were like, I can give you some advice, I can give you some guidance. And you're very confident now, even in things you haven't necessarily done for a long time. You are more confident in that. And it's nice to see, you can tell that is a prime example of someone going from being very nervous and very shaky, and you then guiding her through that. And I can see that then that would translate into your aesthetic life. You help and you teach people and you'd encourage them, but in a nice, and you were very kind and you were very gracious with her as she was trying to draw blood from my body.
Well, that's because she wasn't sticking a needle in me. I didn't feel the pain.
No,
you did.
But she was, you guided her very, very nicely. And she did eventually do that with confidence. And I think that obviously would have given her a confidence boost. And I can see that that's how you would then help your students when you're doing these shifts, when you do your medical shifts, but also when you're dealing with your clients. So I think, in answer to your question, it's improved our lives massively, but I also think you improve other people's lives and you've definitely helped support others.
And one of the biggest changes, I think, is the fact that I've decided to pursue longevity as part of my career, which has been a huge change in our lives. We're trying a new dietary limit, shall we say, right now.
Regimen.
And George is not having sugar or carbs. I'm not either. And actually, it's been interesting. I think you'd be slightly more cranky than you have been recently, but understandably so. But just the fact that we've changed our diet compared to what I was doing when I was a junior doctor, because you're working such crazy shifts, I ended up just doing, drinking lots of fizzy drinks, lots of energy drinks, lots of coffee. And I'm happy to say that all of that has been significantly reduced, and we feel so much better, and we have more confidence in the longevity of our lives. Like, because of the changes we're making now, we're limiting our chances of having any sort of health diseases. We're maximizing our health. We're prolonging our life. And I think that's all been as a result of going into aesthetics and pursuing longevity on the side as well. And hopefully that will just give us a better lease on life.
Yes.
Are you happy that we're going through these changes?
I'd like to caveat that it's just for Lent.
Yes.
At least for the time being.
But you're still, we've gone from vegetarian to keto. Whether you decide to do the more extreme version of keto, shall we say, it's up to you.
Well, currently I am pursuing carnivore, and then we're just taking it kind of day by day to see if it helps. But obviously I am still looking after Isla and feeding Isla. So if that does change at any point, we'll make the decision. But it's definitely made absolute leaps and bounds in terms of the difference between, I mean, we were vegetarian this time last year. Well, even like this time 6 months ago, we were vegetarian. So we've made massive changes to our life, and I think genuinely it has been for the better. But I'll report back about how I'm fighting carnivore.
I think that's a whole discussion for another day, and we'll have you back to talk about that. But before we finish, one thing I wanted to ask you is, after all of our journey of 12 years together and me going into aesthetics, and if you focus on the aesthetics part, is there anything that you think we'd do differently?
I don't like to say about I don't like to say about regrets. I think our journey has been rocky at times, but rocky is probably a bit of an aggressive term. I think it's been wavy at times, but actually I think generally speaking, you're on the path that you should be on. I'm on the path that I should be on. I think the only thing I would say is, if you could have gone into aesthetics earlier, going into aesthetics earlier, because I think you are a happier person, and you've got lots of knowledge that you can kind of share with the world and with your students. So going into aesthetics earlier would have been great for you, but I genuinely don't think I would have changed anything other than that, because I know that this provides you with so much more happiness than the NHS did, or your prior career.
So all in all, George, do you think it was the right decision for us as a family, for me to go into aesthetics?
I definitely do. I think we live a beautiful life because of the decision that you made, and I'm looking forward to seeing
together.
True, and I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what it has in store for you in the future.
Well, George, on that note, it's been absolutely fabulous talking. I feel like you and I don't actually get the opportunity to talk one-on-one anymore, because we have a certain little monster who lives with us, whom we love very much. But I hope this was interesting for you guys as listeners to see what it's like to actually get the honest answer of what it's like to be in aesthetics and how it impacts your family life. So once again, thank you for joining us. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. See you soon.